Good morning, or again, good afternoon or evening, depending when you're watching this video. Today's video is going to be simply called sanding and shaping a decoy. In the process of doing a decoy, unless you work with a finished blank, which I often recommend because you end up with the whole product just the way you see it, and there's very little work to be done on it except puttying the neck seam around the eyes if you're not happy with them. And again, using your hands to get a good feel for smoothness. Like this one, when I ran my hand over it, there's like a little bump up here. So that's something I'm going to require a little sanding on. Can you imagine if you start with a block, something like this, right out of the bandsaw, where you got to take all those edges off and you do them with all kinds of rasp and saws and blades and things. Or you get a rough out, which is what you see here. See how rough that is? You can buy rough outs from some guys where you can, this one has to be filled in the bottom, it's all torn up. But you just put wood putty on there, but you got to do that, and then you get that to this point, which is, fairly smooth. You still got to do a little work on it, but it's a lot less work than doing this. It's a lot less trouble doing this than this. But again, to finish blank, and I'm always pushing blanks. I don't know why, but I like them. Okay, but the tools I like to use very specifically in doing these things, or why I call it sanding and shaping, because you got to get things smooth. I have found little tools like this, which are a sure form, what they call shavers, like a little curved blade on here. And this is beautiful for working on a rough out like this, because this is a pull. In other words, you just go like that, and you pull towards you. You just work that towards you. Or you turn it around, you can go the other direction, depending. You got to follow the grain of the wood. But as you can see, the chips are flying here. Gets them all over, but eventually you'll get that thing smoothed down to the point where you can use your sandpaper. They have the little curve one like this, which I like because you can work yourself down from the tail like that. You can work yourself back, or you can work yourself this way. You can sort of follow the contours. They got bigger ones like this, which are nice on the sides, because on the sides you got a lot more room to play with. You can just kind of sand like that. And you can see, I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's wood chips all over the place. It makes one heck of a mess, but it's got to be done. Unless, again, say you get a finished product like this. So these are tools that I find very important. They're just very inexpensive. They're called shavers or shapers. The other way guys can do it, going to extremes, you use an actual bandsaw, not a bandsaw, a sanding machine like you see right here. That's got that 6-inch blade, bander on the top, and it's got a little 6-inch disc on the side. They have a smaller version like this, which is a 1-inch one. That's beautiful for working on heads, because you can hold that head in your hand and just kind of move it around on that blade. It's easy to do. On the big 6-inch one, it's nice to flatten the bottoms out, because you just lay it right on there and just keep moving it, and that blade is flying. And that thing just smooths it out. You got that little disc on the side where you can kind of round it out a little bit. Now, if you notice, I got to hold these things with my hands. That's why I'm always telling you, wear gloves when you're working with those high-speed tools. When you're working with a bandsaw number 1 or drill press number 2, or any of those sanding drums, things like that, because these things are moving and they throw a lot of dust and a lot of stuff your way. And sometimes you'll go like that and you'll hit the back and it'll flip something back at you. So wear your gloves, wear your eye protection, always keep your eyes protected. And wear a dust mask, because they create a lot of dust, especially when you start to sand with the drums. This roughing out that I did with these, that's all like wood chips. Not so bad, but still they can fly up and hit you. But the dust, and that's why I recommend something like this is just called an air filter or a dust collector. You turn this on, and when you're working with sanders, even by hand, you just stand right here, right next to it, and it draws the dust away from you. Now, when you're doing it by hand, what do I recommend? Well, you can have little Dremel tools like this, where you just turn that power on and you got that disc going. You can hear it, and you just kind of work yourself around to smooth things out. Nice little tool to have. They also have Dremels, what they call flexible shaft, which is a tool you see like this. It's a little bigger version of that. What's nice with this is you're hanging on a hook like on the side of your work table, and you got a nice grip here, and you can really maneuver this thing because you got a hose. You can kind of really get in there, get around underneath, move around, real easy. And again, you can see your hands are involved. So wear a glove because, you know, you get hit with one of these things, that sandpaper would take your skin right off. So that's just something to be mindful of. But get a Dremel tool with a flexible shaft. It's a good way to go. They have a much bigger one. Fordham makes it. It's got much bigger shafts, much stronger. It even has a reversible motor because sometimes you want the motor to go this way, the turn to go this way. Sometimes you want it to go this way. Left-handed people like myself have to always buy the reversible motor because everything seems to be the opposite when you're left-handed. I don't know why, but that's the way it seems to be. In these kind of tools and in this little tool, they got all these little portable sanding drums you can put in there. They're flexible. See, there's a lot of foam in there. See how that thing is flexible? You put that in there, you can really dig in and press into something. The bigger ones, the Fordham tools, take this type, or the bigger shafts. That bigger, see how much bigger they are? You got to go into the bigger tools with these. These are nice. I like to use them just by hand sometimes. Like if I'm going to do an eye track on a decoy, which is in here, I just hold that in my hand and just kind of rub it in, work it around by hand. I like to do a lot of hand work. It seems to me much better. You don't get stuff flying all over the place and make a mess. But you can actually go in there, you can work it like that. They got smaller one like this. You just go in there and you just work yourself around. I think it's an easy way to do things. Like for example, here's one, a head that's almost finished, but see how nice that fits in that eye track? And again, you know, it's not flying at a high speed like you would in the other tool, but it does work. And they got different grit sandpapers you can use to put in there. Also, I always recommend when you're working on these things that the paint stick comes in handy, especially with the heads. Because holding a head while you're working on it, or especially if you're trying to sand it, I mean, look where your hands are. I mean, you're right there. You know, dangerous, very dangerous. You don't want to do that. So I'm sorry, I should have been sitting down so you see my head. But this is the way to do this kind of stuff. And when you have the painting stick, or I call it a painting stick, or just a holding fixture, it's nice that you can do this kind of stuff, see? It's your way, your hand's protected. I still suggest you wear the glove. But you got your hand protected now, and you can work these things real easy while they're spinning. And just a good way to shape out that head. Other things you can do is just take regular sanding blocks. You can buy these in all different grades, all different type of blades. These are nice. Like I told you, I had that one little rough spot here. Maybe I can just hit it with this, knock it off. You know, again, your hands are very good for smoothness, detecting smoothness. I go around here, I find a rough spot somewhere, I can just whack it off with this. They have some of them you can buy little holders for them, things like this. It's just a simple little thing. You attach your sandpaper underneath. I always put a piece of foam under it so it's flexible. And this is a great tool for sanding because you can really move it around with your hand. So you can go into here, you can go on the tail, you can go on the bottom. You can do a lot of stuff with this. And again, the old standby I always mention to you, your fingers. Let your fingers do the walking, as they say. In this case, let your fingers do the sanding. You can take any kind of sandpaper, just lay your finger right in there. Again, that eye groove I was talking about, you can do it with this. See? Your finger's fitting right in there. You can put your pinky in if need be. Whatever you want to do, get it small, get it big, but fingers come in handy for doing a lot of sanding. If that point, I wanted to knock that point off up there, maybe I got to worry about scratching the eye. I just put my finger right up in there and just kind of rough that thing out. Get rid of it. Get rid of that little groove up there. So those are just some ideas that you can use that'll help you out, that these kind of tools are good to get a lot of the hard work done. It's what comes with a 6-inch belt like this. A lot of times I have the smaller one that takes a 1-inch belt. What's nice with that is you can take this and just hold it in your hands and you can put your decoy up on like a fixture like you see here, which is just something I put in a vise and I screw that into the bottom of the decoy. Now I've got this little thing in my hand. Boom, boom, boom. I can run myself around that whole entire body of that decoy. till I get it nice and smooth. And I have another vise out in the garage where I do a lot of the mess work, I call it, that I can move that thing around. I can put it to the side, left, right, upside down. I can move it around. It's like on a swivel. So just a little handy little thing there. So those are just little things I think are helpful to you when it comes to sanding, different grades of sandpaper, handy holders, little round disc that you can wrap your sandpaper around and put in electric tools, regular blocks of sandpaper, just regular pieces of sandpaper. I always tell you I have sandpaper laying around. And again, the dust collector if you're using these power tools, because that really throws the dust up at you. Just put it right in front, just work right in front of the tool. That's the way to work that. It's simple, it's easy, it's the way to go. And it'll help you get a lot done. Because when you say, you know, when you start out like this with just a block of wood, a square block of wood, and then you got to get it down to a smooth finish like this, how do you do it? Well, you got to sand it. A lot of times you'll get them like this and they're kind of roughed out on the router. Guys do like 10 or 12 heads at a time. You get it roughed out like that. You got to get it to that position. You can only do it by sanding it. So I hope these are some helpful little points for you. And the next video will cover some other aspect of something as I think of it.